Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the awesome podcast, Organic Talk on Artificial Intelligence. It's just Jose and myself today, and this one's going to be a little bit different from the previous two. We are going to, rather than chat for an hour or so, we're going to go a little bit deeper into some technical stuff, probably talk for 25, 30 minutes or so. And the topic for today's session is going to be vibe coding, and we're going to look at what that sort of looks like in principle and what that can actually look like from a practical point of view. So I'm Fraser, Chief Scientist at IriusRisk, and over to Jose to say hello.
Hello, I'm Jose, Head of AI at IriusRisk.
Cool. So Jose, vibe coding. I think it's hot topic right now, along with MCPs and agentic AI. And it's I don't know, you guys had Marmite over in Spain, but in the UK, Marmite is famously one of those things that you either love it or hate it. And I think
Oh,
voting
yes.
seems to be equally divided in that some people are really fully embracing it, and some people, I saw a thing on LinkedIn where it's vulnerabilities as a service, right? So
Yeah.
there seems to be a good mix of excitement and skepticism. So, firstly, before we get into any technical details, where do you stand on vibe coding?
Well, it's super difficult. Well, by coding, the concept is I just forget about the code. I just say whatever I want. And the large language model is doing the job. And I'm just not even checking the code.
Hmm.
Probably that's too much. Probably that's too extreme.
Hmm.
I think there is a difference between not doing anything,
Hmm.
like the old way, and by coding. And I think that in that middle area is like where the real productivity is for production.
Hmm.
I mean, for production code. Yeah.
Hmm. And you, I think, recently released a blog on the difference between, let's say, coding and software, right? And how vibe coding. So, do you want to quickly describe that?
Yeah. So the idea is code is easy, but software is harder. It's like
Hmm.
easier and harder because, yeah, if you are just worried about the amount of lines of code or the productivity in terms of lines of code, it's easier. Of course, you just need to ask.
Hmm.
But software is much more than that.
Hmm.
You need to take care about not all of the security, but you need to maintain the whole thing. You need to put that thing into scale, and that's if you lost the control of the code, it's super difficult, almost impossible at this point to have all these things in production
Hmm.
seriously.
Hmm.
So the moment you lost the control, I'm saying that the software is harder because the moment you are giving part of the control of the code, then you need to be more careful about all these things in software.
Hmm.
So software is like the counterweight. I mean, it's like easier that part, but that you need to be careful about the other side
But
of the problem.
to paraphrase, then, software development is more than just writing lines of code, and the LLM can do the lines of code part perfectly fine or good enough for now at least. But there's this whole other thing that is software development that isn't doesn't magically just go away because you're using large language models. And so what we're going to be looking at in a minute is how to build a bit of a process around
Mm.
vibe coding, again, to borrow that term, which allows the large language model to take care of the code mostly, but it's adding structure and support to the software development process so that it's not going off the rails, right?
Yeah. So and it's a tricky thing because I think that and that is a personal opinion, but in my opinion, the software development discipline is changing, and then we need to figure out what is going to be the way where that we are what we need to follow to create software,
Mm.
and even if we try to keep the pace, it's been difficult even for the people that is trying to to use the new tools and so on. But at the same time, if you don't do that thing, you're getting like that's too much difference between your point and the last line. And yeah, it's kind of a tricky thing because it's like continuously sharpening your
Yeah.
that's yeah, it's tricky, but it's interesting as well.
It's and fast moving. We in a future podcast, hopefully recorded in a couple of weeks' time from now, we're going to have Simon Wardley of Wardley mapping fame, and so almost like a preempting that. LLMs have commodified the creation of code, and now we've got this sort of vibe coding thing appearing in the top left of the Wardley map. And
Mm.
I think, from the experimentation you've been doing, from the stuff I've been doing, and there's probably like a billion people out there at the moment, all doing similar experiments and trying to get it. It feels like we're, over the next 6 months, we're going to see this creation of a whole new process, a vibe coding process. At the moment, it's chaos, but that's only going to become more and more sort of stabilized and more well understood about what works and what doesn't. So I think we're looking at some interesting times ahead of us as this whole thing goes from new and crazy and novel to actually, we're starting to see what patterns really work here and what are the anti-patterns. So do you want to share your screen and we can sort of dive into some of the things that you've been trying?
Yeah, I will give some kind of context here before sharing the screen. Yeah, or at least in my case, it's been difficult sometimes to tame the large language model or to tame the agent. To it's very easy to create a POC, really, really easy. But when you want to create something like which is big with
Mm,
with faces and things like that, where you can you have at least the sense of controlling the whole thing, it's been really difficult.
mm,
It's not only about the control that you are giving, it's about the limitations of the tools that you are using. So
mhm,
for example, one of the biggest problem is the context limit. You have 200,000 tokens in Sonnet, or you have 2 millions with Gemini. But you need to take into consideration that thing because you are using an agent in your chat, so you need to be careful about those things. So, and that's the reason why something like this thing I am I'm presenting today, not presenting, but this is the how I am doing this today. Probably in 2 weeks, this is going to be completely different. But anyway,
mm, mm,
yes. So one of the things I have realized is that you need to take care about, I mean, you need to warm up the conversation with the agent. So this is cursor, and you need to warm up like the context to have all the things that you would like to have inside the context and discuss about this thing. Like I'm calling it warming up the conversation. The every single tab is a new conversation. And the first thing I thought was I want one feature per tab, like maximum. And how can I warm up my conversation faster? And or not faster, like not only faster, but always in the same time. So it's not like an art, it's
mm,
more like a process than an art. Then something I am using is like alongside my source code, I'm using something that I have called context board, where I have, the architecture, the master plan, the project, the standards, every single thing that is being the core of the. And by the way, it's not being too big. So every single thing that is the core of my project, and I am using, this is the architecture. Probably this architecture. This is a tiny thing, so the architecture is super small. But usually I will include the mermaid diagrams and things like that.
mm,
I have the master plan, so every single phase that I am right now in or yes, what is the state of the source code. So I have the project, every single folder, and even the files, and then what is included in every single one of these things. The standards, and then the features. Okay, every single one of these things is a feature, and there is a progress for that specific feature, and there are specs. And then meta, which is, yeah, this is myself trying to split the different conversations I'm going to have with my large language model, so I can use only the things I really want to use for the next conversation. So in meta, I have, this is the development plan, and then yeah, this is the instructions. In Cursor, you have rules. I am trying to make this like useful for Cursor or for something like Climb as well. I am using the rules in this project. This is an experiment, by the way, and the project guidelines. Yeah, I can include more things, but this is a tiny thing, so I am not including more things. So if I want to create another conversation, or with coding the next feature, I just need to say something like this, like, hey, take into consideration the core, everything that is here, the context bold. By the way, I am explaining the whole thing. All these things that I am explaining right now is explained here. So you have here like the meta process, how the context bold needs to be used, and the different things. So, and even an example. So the large language model can understand the whole thing about the context bold. So I'm using like the core, then the context bold, and let's say I can say, let's continue with the master plan. This master plan is going to, okay, the phase one is almost finished, then it probably is going to continue from this point. Okay. This is different to what I was doing like 3 weeks ago. And probably this is going to be, being different. It's not, well, it's different, but at the same time, it's not that different. It's different because I was trying to use Gemini, which is super good because the context is really big. It's 2 million context. But I am not that good with Gemini for some reason. Everyone is loving it. I really like it, but I am extracting the best from Sonnet. So yeah, I have needed to adapt initial my initial approach to this context ball, splitting even more the things that I had in every single one of these files, which demonstrate that you really need to take into consideration that you can do wherever you can do, taking into consideration the agent you are using. And this is like working with a person. I mean, if I have a really tall person, I can use that person for a basketball team or whatever. But it's not that tall, it's very small. Maybe this is for something else. So you need to, this is not like a silver bullet for everything. It's a process specifically designed for this specific agent. And by the way, I'm not repeating this thing, but I have done it like 5 minutes ago. If just by saying this, it can read the master plan, read the project, so it's warming up the conversation itself, the standards, the process, and so on, and then it's reading the features, it's figuring out where the sources is, and it's just like, okay, so it's almost the phase one is almost there, and so on. Okay, so I can say, yeah, is there any specific plan or implementation, and then I can continue. But everything is done. I mean, it's right now I can start. Probably I could start coding. Otherwise, I need to warm up the conversation.
Yeah. So you've been doing this for a couple of weeks, this particular style. Have you found that this has drastically changed the success you've been having with the vibe coding? Do you think that this is sort of moving in the right direction? How are you feeling about it?
This is not definitely this is not by coding. I mean, I am using is like a middle ground of by coding. I am not using by coding because I not feel comfortable enough with just like giving everything to the large language model. But I have realized that I am more productive with this, let's say, more less artistic approach, more engineering approach.
Mm,
Um, because all my conversations, something I realized it before is like I was super successful in with some conversations and super bad with other conversations. It's like if I am if I am realizing that the conversation is warming up in the right way, I can extract more. But then I'm reaching the limit, and then I say, "Oh, I need to create another one." But maybe that second conversation is not that good. I have realized that with this approach, I can have more or less, and it's more stable. I mean, every single conversation is more or less the same.
That's interesting. I was going through an interesting situation actually this morning, I think it was, where I'd done a little bit of sneaky. I'm going to use the word. I know I don't know if there's technically a definition out there yet, but I'm going to use the word vibe coding to mean I'm not actually reading the code. Like I'm controlling the software development process, but I don't actually care about the code.
Mhm.
Um, and I was doing a little bit of sneaky vibe coding over the weekend. It was a bank holiday in the UK, so in between doing stuff with the family, I'd jump on and tell the LLM to do something. And then I got to this morning and I realized I wasn't really happy with the direction that it went in. And so I had that kind of moment of, should I just go back? It was literally 25, 30 commits and
Mm,
just blat it all. Because I'd learned
mm,
some interesting stuff. And the question is, am I so far down the rabbit hole and I've learned some things? So am I better off sort of going down the rabbit hole, or am I
mm.
better off just going back in time to 30 commits and starting from scratch,
Yeah.
knowing what I know? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I need to. And I did a blog post on this the other week as well. I need to not be attached to the code. I need to just let it go. And so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to revert back to the original design and not the original update to my design from Thursday and take what I'd learned in those 20 or so commits and just sort of adjust the design now and then move forward again. So I think there's a certain freedom that you get once you get over a certain level of anxiety. There's a certain freedom you get from just not being too attached to things and to
Yeah.
just sort of allow yourself to just roll back and then roll forward again as you're going through this process. And this is not like you've spent 40 hours writing this code and it's going to take you another 40 hours to replicate it. It's not like that anymore.
Yeah, I like that thing. I am convinced that the problem is that probably the ID is not good enough right
Mm,
now
mm,
for where we are. It's too linear for me. It's
mm,
like I am using it as a way to take take a branch from that point of my
mm.
code. I really need a branch. I
Yeah.
really need a tree where I can say, I would like to go back 3 nodes ago
Mm,
and start from another direction, but not losing everything that I have done. It's just I have the code, I have these results,
mm,
but I am going to use these results from like back 2 hours ago,
mm,
and I am I need that thing.
mm.
I am just all these what I am all these things that I am doing is me realizing that I would like to have like a tree,
Yeah.
and then saying I would like to go back to another checkpoint and then try in another way, or maybe, and if I am not happy, then I come back to this
Yeah.
point. Yes, it's that's my feeling right now. But by the way, I'm not full with the bike coding. Probably it's a personality thing. I mean, every single person is going to be different, but I am not that happy. Just like saying,
Well, it depends
so,
on what you're doing, right? I think we spoke about this last time. It's
yeah,
in some other conversation, it's you could use like YOLO vibe coding when building a prototype for a blog post, a blog site or something like that, but you wouldn't do that if you were changing cryptographic functions in a banking application. You know, you may use AI there to some extent, but you're gonna have a lot more control over the source code there compared to, your personal blog or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, and back again. So you can reach a point where you are super happy with your code. It's like, okay, I have the whole control. I'm going to give it to the large language model and see
Mm.
what is happening with this branch. And then when I have learned of that path, then I come back to this point where I am happy, and then
Mm.
I can try in another way, knowing all the things that I have learned
Yeah.
in this branch. This is the only thing I'm missing right now. It's like probably it's a no, probably 100% is a problem with the IDE more than the problem with the flow or the workflow or the large language model, because everything will be the same. It's just like how the IDE is organizing the things. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they haven't fundamentally changed since the 1970s or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that whole sort of linear working on text documents, and that's essentially the same paradigm, right?
It makes sense. Like I don't know, 3 years ago or 2 years ago, perfectly makes sense because you are a human and the humans work better in a linear way. But right now you are not just a human. There is a machine with you, and everything is super cheap. It's like do it the whole thing, and then I'm going to back, because as you said, it's not like you are spending 40 hours with something. It's just a couple of hours or whatever. Yeah.
I did after doing my 25-30 commit revert. I did realize that I had made some other sort of unrelated changes that were
Mhm.
related to the thing I was reverting. So after,
Yeah,
like, and I had to read, luckily I still had the chat history. So I just sort of re-went through the chat to sort of reapply
that
after
thing.
the reset.
I do that thing as well,
Yeah.
because sometimes something is happening. I mean, certain nuances are there in the chat, so you need to go to the chat and say, "Oh, yeah, yeah, that happened."
Mm,
This is when I am saying, when you are warming up your
yeah.
conversation. You reach a point in the conversation when you are saying something that is key, but you cannot replicate exactly the same thing in another conversation,
Mm,
even if it is for a very similar feature or something. Yeah, so it's difficult. I mean, it's kind of an art. We are trying to push it because we are engineers, or we are trying to push it into the engineering thing. I don't think it's going to be that easy to 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 make a discipline like it's completely engineering thing. It's like, maybe it's because it's the early days. And I remember very well the early days of the, well, not the early days of the software engineer, because I'm not that old. But the old way was, it was kind of an art and kind
yeah.
of engineering thing. Now everything is more, organized. Probably we are living something similar and
Mm,
parallel. That's exactly the same thing.
yeah. I guess it remains to see what
Yeah.
how exactly this is going to evolve over the next 6 months, 3 months, 12 months, whatever it is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that probably wraps it up for this one. Um, we'll link to the blog posts that we mentioned on the description. And if you're listening to this, you're probably worth going to hunt down the YouTube video for this so you can see Jose sharing his screen. Other than that, thank you, Jose, for your time, and thank you everyone for listening, and we shall see you soon.